showed Alan, you can have, so we are officially technically live. Um, and I will just message the group here really quickly. So we can get started whenever you are ready, Kim.
Okay. And did we have a specific topic we were going to tonight?
Um, from pink slips to pivots,
Okay.
navigating being laid off or experiencing job changes.
Okay. All right, great. And I guess my last question, so how do we know where our audience, how many people are here or who they are?
So I
Is that
am logging into LinkedIn on my phone, and we will see some messages pop up. Oh, there we go. See, that's where I'm turning that down. So right now we have a few on the phone. I can see that we have at least 5 people. So we'll just ask them to let us know where they're tuning in from and what's one. And I've got a question up here for them. What's one word to describe their current career mindset? So we just basically jump right into our normal introductions.
okay? And are we, Charlotte, Alan, and me able to see who's on the call?
No.
Yeah, that's the only thing we don't really, unless they introduce themselves, we won't know who is actually here. So, but we do encourage
Or
them
how
to,
many?
yeah.
Right. Okay.
But I'm keeping track of that on my
Okay.
phone. But also, we'll ask them to um, leave a comment in the comment section just to let us know where they're from and who is watching. So.
Okay. All right, great. Okay, well, welcome to everybody out there listening, watching, whoever that may be. You are on Career Coaches on Call, and we are part of the Thought Leadership Branding Club, which is a really great club to be a part of with excellent programming and lots of great people to connect with and build a very strong network with. So, whether you're building a business, building your career, Thought Leadership Branding Club is a great place to be. Um, we are going to be talking tonight on Career Coaches on Call about going from the pink slip to making that pivot that you want to make, that you need to make in order to continue your career moving in the right direction. And as always, we have great coaches here that are going to help us get there. And so, with that, I guess the first what I'd like you all to do, instead of asking questions specifically around the topic for tonight, is just to give an overview of what are you seeing in the market, in the job market, and what are you seeing the challenges people have, as well as any trends that you might see. So, Charlotte, can we start with you? If you could introduce yourself and give us your thoughts on the job market.
Um,
If
yeah, I can't get my. I'm having troubles with my audio. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
yes, we
Okay,
can hear
very
you.
good. Sorry, I'm Charlotte Taylor. I'm a career coach and resume writer based in Central Florida, and we're having a hailstorm of all things in the middle of late spring, early summer. So if I flake out on you, that's why, because my internet connection keeps going off and on. Um, you know, getting laid off is never easy, and how you handle it can make all the difference. I'm seeing a lot of federal employees losing their jobs, transitioning into the private sector employment. Um, I have other people that just feel like they're, waiting for the hammer to fall, knowing, that layoffs are coming, and so they have this fear and this dread of, oh no, what if it's me? And, my advice is be prepared. That way, you'll be prepared for a promotion if you don't get laid off. So, I think it's a tough job market. It's the most difficult job market I've seen since like 2008, but it's different in the fact that um, employers just seem to be holding on, not adding any jobs, only replacing the absolute necessary jobs. I don't know if that's what y'all are seeing. The hospitality industry is picking up because it's the summer months here, but healthcare is laying off people here. So that's what I'm seeing in Florida.
Okay, great. Thank you, Charlotte. And it's good to hear you. Feels like it's been a while now that we're going to every 2 weeks, and I might have missed the last one anyway. So it has been a while. Alan, how about you? What are you seeing in the market? And please introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Alan Kirshner. I'm a career coach. I help people with job search strategies, interview prep, LinkedIn profile optimization, and salary negotiation. And I agree with Charlotte. It is a challenging market, but I'm working with a number of people that have been landing in the last number of weeks, and some actually. One of my clients that I just got notification from this past Friday. He started a consulting job, and then he also got an offer for a full-time job. So I think the key, really, like it's been in the past as well too, is that a lot of the people that are landing that I'm working with, it's usually through some type of networking connection. So I think it's really, really important. You have to be fully committed to doing that. And I always talk about that being a long game. It's not something that, you just hit an easy apply button and you're there. You need to develop and cultivate relationships. So I think that's really an important part of it. And, as much as there are challenges and there are companies that are laying off people, there's still hiring going on as well too. So I try to keep that in mind when I talk to people and try to not get them too discouraged. But it definitely is a challenging market as well too.
Great. Thank you, Alan. I think, between you and what Charlotte said as well, I think it comes down to expectations, right? You have to know it is a tough market, as Charlotte said, and that could mean it could take 6, 9, 12 months for someone to land a job, depending on what level they're at. It might be harder the higher level up, but that doesn't mean you should settle for that. You still want to work for getting hired sooner than that, and that can happen as well. So, but having the right expectations allows you to stay in the right state of mind. So I think that's important. So thanks for that, Alan. Melanie, how about you?
Yeah.
What do you got to say?
What have I? So, I agree with both Charlotte and Alan. I mean, especially with what Charlotte said. I mean, having gone through the 2008 recession, I went through 2 recessions as a recruiter, and this isn't a recession like job market. There's definitely differentiating factors. I mean, truthfully, it could be a lot worse. And I know there's a lot of people out there that have been actively looking and are like, seriously, how much worse could it get? But it really could be a lot worse. And so we're not necessarily there, but there is that disconnect that we're seeing in terms of what's actually happening in the market. We still see positions. So I do think we're somewhat of in a transition. And I think knowing too that, I think knowing too was what Alan was saying, he's starting to see his clients start landing positions. So that is also a good indicator as well that, this is just going to be an up and down market. And again, how are we going to control it? There's a lot of things. I always look at the things that we can control versus the things we can't and how we're going to position ourselves. I think that for me is the biggest thing, is really being able to understand how are you positioning yourself in this market and making yourself stand out. It's a highly competitive market right now, and it's coming down to nuances in interviews. It's coming down to small details. And I think that's the biggest thing for people to really understand and realize. It is really about how we're positioning ourselves overall.
Great. Yep, it's an excellent point as well. Certainly, you don't want to be discouraged. You just want to, find your way and then position yourself accordingly. So great to have you all here. I'm going to go to Alan then to start off. So Alan, you're going along in your career. Everything's going fine. Maybe you even had a promotion or two along the way. and then all of a sudden, boom, you get the call to HR and you lose your job, and it kind of feels like it was out of nowhere. What do you do? What do you do then? What's the first step?
Well, one of the things that I think is important is to just have this mindset, if you've been through that before, that you need to always be prepared. So I think it's important to be as updated as you can with your resume as well as your LinkedIn profile, and also be networking. It's not just when you're looking for a job. So that being aside, if you do get blindsided, the quicker that you can respond, the better. So I think part of it is getting the right mindset initially, especially if it was a shock. So it's going to take some time, to get over that aspect of it, but you don't, try not to dwell on the negativity aspect of it for too long. But, you go through cycles of grief. So that's certainly something that happens in the beginning. And, you could be very disappointed or very angry as well, too. So I think first thing is you have to be of the right mindset in order to move forward with your job search. So you're not going to be able to convince somebody you're the appropriate person if you're not feeling confident and positive about things. So I think getting your mindset right is the first step. And then really, rekindling or reaching out to your network to let them know what your situation is and to seek out help. And again, we talk a lot about networking isn't asking for a job, it's asking for advice, information, and referrals. So you're looking for information. You're not putting that request into somebody that you're asking them to find you a job, because that's just too big of a request, and you're not going to have a lot of success doing that unless it's really somebody that is very close to you that would be willing to do that. So I think those are kind of a couple of the first steps to get back in the game, so to speak.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Alan. And it's definitely not an easy time. And one thing, and I know a lot of people probably on the call are out of work right now, but think about what happened before you lost your job. When I look at my career, there were signs along the way, and I thought I could turn them around. But if you start finding yourself maybe being left out of meetings, if you start getting a feeling that maybe your boss all of a sudden is much more critical of you and your work, or you just have a general feeling that things aren't right, well, that's the time that you want to really make sure, as Alan said, that your resume and LinkedIn profile are up to date and your network is strong, because we usually can sense these things and see these things. We just got to be open to it and be aware that these things might be happening. Melanie, so what other things can a person do? Like, what do they need to be deciding when they're first starting to look for a job? How do they go about deciding what direction they want to go, or what to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that I really have found is a lot of people jump right into the resume, like, got to get that resume, out. And honestly, depending on where you're at. So if you're starting to like just read the room in terms of what's happening with your company, I just talked to a gentleman today. He's seeing actually more upper level positions being eliminated, which is definitely not, that is a red flag right there. And so he's starting to prepare. And I think you need to understand that the preparation process isn't just as easy as throwing all your information on the, or updating that resume you maybe haven't touched in like several years because you've been in that job. If you've been in the job market for, a while now's a great time, and maybe you're not necessarily seeing the results. Our resumes are constantly needing to evolve. And so I think going back through and really determining, okay, what can I edit here? What can I change? Maybe you've edited too much. Maybe you've taken away too much. Going back to this gentleman that I spoke with today, he actually had an outplacement service do his LinkedIn, and truthfully, I didn't even understand like what he did. I was like, okay, are you in HR or are you? And then I scrolled down and I was like, oh, you're in operations. Like, it wasn't clear. And so really getting clear on your messaging is so important, because you need to be able to say what you do, how you do it, what makes you stand out, what makes you special to to all of these conversations, whether they're networking, whether they're, that really getting to to those specific points. And so I think it's really important for you to spend the time, either take the time now or take the time before you're going to need to go to market with that resume, with that LinkedIn profile, and being very clear and concise with your messaging.
Yeah, I think that's great, and there's so much value in that, Melanie. First of all, you want to have that common thread, that common message through LinkedIn, resume, interviewing, networking conversations, just like Melanie said. But it's also, should be the beginning to the tell me about yourself question that you get in an interview. It's your brand, and think about any successful marketing program. It's about repetition. It's about delivering that same message over and over again until people start repeating it back to you. So thinking about, what do people think about when they think of me as a coworker? Start there and develop your personal brand or your unique value proposition, as Melanie refers to it. So that's great information, Melanie. Charlotte, we want that common theme, right? That core message, that personal brand, whatever you want to call it, to come through on everything. When you look at a resume, how do you do that? How do you you have very limited space to be creative in terms of like the about section on LinkedIn. You write from the first person and you can be a little informal about it. How do you do that on a resume?
Well, you want to keep in
How do you get the
mind
brand
that
across?
on your resume, you want to make it very easy to scan so that you're going to grab that recruiter's attention in the first, 10 seconds so that they can easily read it. And there have been some eye tracking studies that show how people read documents. And two of the most common are the letter F, like in Frank. So they're going to read across the top and down the left-hand side, or they're going to read it kind of in a spiral or a wedding cake. If you think about it, they're going to start at the top and kind of look there, and then they're looking, in that top layer of the cake, and then down to the bottom where your education and experience usually is. So you want to keep that in mind and use use Microsoft Word to its advantage. Use bolding leading into your accomplishment statements. Maybe give yourself a little white space as well. Don't jam pack it with keywords. And that's especially true if you're a government employee trying to transition to the corporate world. They take 5 paragraphs to explain something that's very simple that we would probably explain in 1 line of text. So, but getting it, condensing that down, is a tough thing to do. That's been my toughest challenge in working with the lady I'm working with now that's transitioning from Homeland Security into the private sector. And then I'd like to make a little note add to what Alan said about you're asking for advice, information, referrals. Steve Dalton has a really cool framework. And it's, if you remember tiara, like, a beauty queen's tiara, the T stands for trends, the I stands for insights, the A is advice, the R is resources, and then A is assignments. So if you want a really good explanation of that, I'm going to put this handout in the back channel. We'll see if Melanie can post it, but it's an explanation of that informational interview process where you're asking, you want to find out about the trends, you want to get some insights about the industry, you want to get their advice about what it takes to succeed in that job, you want to ask them if there's any thing you should read to, learn more. Are there any professional development courses you can take? And then, ask them, what did they do before they entered this occupation? Ask them what the leadership is like. So I'll put that link. I don't know if it'll work or not, but we'll try.
Okay, thanks, Charlotte. A lot of good information there, although I have to admit, I'm a little stuck still on the cake image you got, because it sounded really good. But I made some really great points about making it easy for people to read and hitting on the right information. I think that's great. Alan, in keeping with the resume for now, and talking about the top part of the resume, one of the things, by the way, I think it can often be overlooked is like the header of the resume, where you have your name, and you should have your phone number, you should have your LinkedIn URL, email address, and your city and state. But you don't need your street address. You don't need to say, here's my LinkedIn URL and then have it, or email and have it, because those cluttered the resume. So besides what Charlotte was talking about with making it easy for someone to scan, you want to have that white space there. You want to not have it cluttered, because it just gives the perception even that it's more difficult to read, just because there are a lot of words there. But Alan, in talking about the summary, what's the goal of the summary, and what kind of information should it contain?
Yeah, again, that's really important real estate up at the top. So like you were saying, it's important to have white space, also to have your contact information up there where it's easily found. I noticed that a lot of people that I've worked with don't put their LinkedIn profile address up at the top there. So that's important. And again, I think just to make the point with the address, you really don't want to give your street address, because it's not something that's necessary for them. Somebody can look on Zillow or something and look and see where you live, what kind of house you're in, and what it's valued at. So it's not information that you want to share, and it's not important. So I would leave that out. But in the summary section itself, you want to have it say maybe about 3 or 4 sentences. I like to have right underneath the contact information, I like to list what the job title is of the one that you're going for. So I think that's can be very helpful for keyword searching purposes. So I would have that before I would have the summary. Then in the summary, I would have information about who you are, what type of experience you have, what you're known for. Basically, a lot of times what we're talking about is a value proposition. So what is it that makes you special and unique? That, getting back to Melanie's point before, it's important, like, how do you stand out from the competition? Why should they hire you? What is it that you bring to the table that makes you unique? And you want to try to summarize that up in that summary section. And again, you don't have to write summary. That's where I would put the title of the role that you're going for. So you can have, you can have some quantification there. You can have some of the keywords in that area as well too. But you kind of want to, within several sentences, get to the point about what makes you special. And what you're looking to do is have them read on further down into the resume. If you don't catch their eye at the top half of the resume, they're not going to get to the bottom of page 1, let alone page 2, or if there's page 3. So I think it's important to grab their attention with the keywords and with the value proposition.
Yep, that is very important. And I too, in my resume that I write with my clients, I like to have 3 jobs listed across the top above the summary. I'm trying to think how it looks, maybe above the summary. And the reason why I think that's important, like job titles, is because, as Melanie has taught us over the months that we've been doing this program, is that the applicant tracking system is often used as a database. So if someone is looking for a project manager, they go to their ATS, they'll do a search on project manager. So that's why I think having the job titles that you're interested in up top could help you be found that way. Melanie, feel free to correct me when time comes if you want to, but that's Alan, my approach as well. And then the summary, like you said, Alan, it should differentiate you, but it's got to be a real powerful attention grabber. Again, going back to Charlotte's comment that the recruiters just scan the resume, so you got to hit them hard, coming right out of the box with your big guns. And the summary should be a little bit about the past, what you've done, but mostly looking forward of what you could bring to the next employer. Melanie, so for you, with that, the top part of the resume, what else do you do there? Or do you have a different approach or something else you want to add to that?
No, I mean, it's very similar to that. I think, again, one of the things I would test you on is I always say, like, as a former worker, when I put my recruiter hat on, my team would always tell you, like, I wasn't necessarily great with remembering names, but I could remember where somebody worked, or I could remember that random job title or something just unique to them. Like, that was the thing I always remembered. And oftentimes, if I were to remove your name and just read your summary, are you going to stand out? Are you going to have something in there that I'm like, oh, what about that, that guy or that gal that had, that did XYZ, guess what? Those are all things that I actually could go back into. And if I had a phrase or something that I remembered, I could actually use that to, hey, find me that resume in like the system, in the ATS system that had that, because that's a term that was in, or words that were used in the resume. So make it sure that it's unique to you. I find that summaries are often kind of dull and boring, to be very honest, because again, we're reusing things that other people have, written. And so we want to, I'm not saying go over the top with adjectives and adverbs and things like that. But, definitely give a little life to that summary, because it does need to make you stand out. Because when you're interviewing, those are I'm going to go back to those little things. Those are the little things, like, who is that person that we met? I've literally been in an interview, or I've had interviews for my own team, that we would come together as a team and we would go through the people. And I had one situation where we got to one gentleman. Nobody could remember if we anything about him. Nothing. No, and I got to the point I was like, did we actually interview him? Like, that's to the point we got to, because nobody had anything to say about him. Like, his resume brought back nothing. It was just like a blank void. And I'm like, do we know that we interviewed him? And so you don't want to be that person. You don't want to be that person that is, forgettable. And if you are going to be rememberable, do it in a positive way. So, I think you have to, it's a fine balance. Don't go heavy use on adjectives, please. We don't need 12 adjectives to describe us, but also from that standpoint, don't be afraid to put the spotlight on you.
Yeah. Melanie, that's so right. The summary, I was working with a client today, and I read it and it sounded good. I said, but you know what? I could put that summary on my resume. Now, I wouldn't be able to back it up with any detail or anything like that, but there's nothing here that says it's you.
Yeah.
This is something that any operations person could put on their resume.
And I would just add,
and that's a question I think.
Oh, I was just going to say something, Ken. I would just add really quickly too. Please don't put your summary in your about section on LinkedIn. I'm going to have to use this as my soapbox for a second. Please do not do that. Please don't do that. Your about section on your profile is so much more. It's your opportunity to we have more real estate to play with. We don't have that much real estate on a resume summary. That serves a purpose, but your about section, don't just copy and paste that. I want to know something else. I want something catchy. It is literally your opportunity to tell the story, but in a greater way. And so I see far too many people doing that. But again, to the same point, the person that I spoke with earlier today, Ken, I read his about section while I was on the call with him, and I was like, the person that's on this profile is not the person I'm talking to. I was like, there is nothing about you.
Yeah.
I was like, you've done 100 million things, and I'm not seeing that in any space of your profile. So no, your profile is not helping.
Yeah. And I think, whether it's a resume or the profile, I think the question that you want to ask as a as a candidate is this unique to me, or could anybody say this? And if anybody could say it, then don't put it in your resume. You got to find a way to make it a differentiator. And that typically comes down to making sure you include results in your resume. Because when your results are your results, nobody else can say that. But when you don't have results, more often than not, it's more of a generic statement that's not going to help you get your next opportunity. One other thing quickly, because I do want to, I'm kind of working through the job from pink slip to pivot, but you mentioned interviewing and not remembering whether the person interviewed or not. I think there's a lot of value with it. Some of my clients, we put together a little, what you call a brag book, and it might be 6 PowerPoint slides, of a little bit about me, maybe a great success story, maybe my skills and competencies, maybe a review or two, recommendation or two, or a job review, and then maybe a nice version of the resume at the end. And I encourage my clients to either leave that behind, or if you have if you can mail it, US mail it that way. But the reason is because, and I would say leave it behind. You're in an interview, right? You do a great job. You feel good about it. The interviewer says, you know what, we've got a couple more candidates that we're going to be interviewing over the next 2 weeks, and then we'll get back to you. So 2 weeks pass, a million things have happened. They've interviewed 2 other candidates. And then you get to that conversation like with Melanie. So I don't really remember everything this person said. But if you have a leave behind, then you have something that they could look at and say, oh, yes, I remember this person. They told me this, this, and this. So anything you could do to make yourself memorable over those 2 or 3 weeks before they make their decision on who's moving on in the process, I think is very valuable. I hope that made sense. I don't know. Maybe it
No, it makes perfect sense.
But all right, thanks, Melanie. So coming back then to, let's go to Alan then on this one. Alan, so again, with attention grabbing being the concept. Well, actually, no, before we even get to attention grabbing. And what about deciding your direction? You come out, you just lost your job. Should you go back and look for a job doing what you did? Or what if you say, you know what, I really want to pivot. I really want to try something different. How do you figure out what direction to go? And then how do you start to make that happen?
Yeah, that's a great point, Ken. I think to Melanie's point before too, about people just want to jump in and update their resume. And this is an opportunity, as much as you didn't necessarily initiate it, for you to take a look and say, do I want to keep doing what I've done before? Or do I want to do something different? So just case in point for myself, I pivoted out of a corporate career in accounting and financial roles and got into career coaching. So when I was laid off, I had the opportunity to do outplacement. So my company gave me that. So I had an opportunity to work with a career coach and look at, do I want to keep doing what I've done before? Do I want to try something different? So I actually went down both of those paths to try to look at, jobs that might be comparable to what I did, and also to really soul search and see what I might want to do. And one of the things I did was I started thinking about what my skill set was and what I was interested in. And I started making a list and talking to people doing the things that I might be interested in doing. So I think it's very helpful to start having conversations. We talk about networking and looking for advice, information, and referrals. So that's a situation where it wasn't specifically job search related. It was more like, I see what you're doing. I'd like to find out how you got there. There were, when I was thinking about career coaching, there were 2 people that were working at a career development office of my university who had pivoted from industry to there. I had one-on-one sessions with both of them to find out how they did it, what they needed to do. Did they need to go back and get a degree, or like how did they get into it? What kind of advice could they give me? So I think it's really important to talk to people that are doing what you think you might want to be doing if you're pivoting, and finding out what it takes to get there. And, people are very willing to talk to you about their career and what they were doing. So I think that's really one of the critical things, I think, when you're deciding if you want to make a pivot, finding out as much as you can about it, and also the best way, I think, is to talk to people that are doing it or made that pivot similar to what you're thinking about doing.
That's great. Great advice, Alan. And it sounds to me like you just described networking too, right? It's about going out there, learning what's out there, how people got to where they
Sure.
are, to see if it's truly what you're interested in, right? Yeah, and then to find out what are the skills and competencies I might need, and then see how your experience can match that. Charlotte, I think Alan gave great advice, but sometimes even then we still don't know what we want to do. What other ways do you help your clients figure out their direction?
Oh, we do. I do a lot of career clarity and coaching and figuring out what that next step in their career path is. Some of the assessments I use are the Clifton Strengths, or if they've done a Myers-Briggs, I like to see that. One tool that I really use consistently is the Career Direct assessment, because it's kind of like a Strengths Finder and a Myers-Briggs rolled into one, and it's connected to the Bureau of Labor Statistics uh, data, and it's also connected to the ONET online, so that you can see what's the economic outlook. I mean, you got to figure out what you want to do, but you also want to figure out, is that a growing field, or is it is it something that AI is going to replace? Um, and I truly believe that there are not going to be that many jobs that are replaced by AI, but knowing AI will help you to perform better on that job. So maybe there'll be fewer, computer programmers, but they're not going to be eliminated totally. They just can't. But computer, programmers that also, understand,
Yeah.
AI and machine learning, that's going to be a good thing. So assess what your skills are, and then assess the economic market, for that field.
Great. Yeah, and I think that's something that I agree with you. Those assessments help you narrow your search. They give you some ideas. Sometimes the ideas, you do need someone to talk to help guide you through them, because they could be like, well, you could be a car mechanic or a brain surgeon, based on what you put in there. So I think there is some nuance to that, and a career coach, like I know Charlotte is very good at doing this, helping people then sift through the results to come up with a direction they want. So thank you for that, Charlotte. Melanie, let's move over to LinkedIn. Again, we're talking about from pink slips to pivot. How does someone change careers? Like, what happens to your LinkedIn profile if you're changing careers? Where do you need to focus, and how do you need to message yourself?
Yeah, and I see Sarah had put a comment in. It feels like in this job market, pivoting has become very difficult, and I think it's good to understand too. Sometimes there's different types of pivots. You could pivot within your own industry, but you're maybe pivoting. You're trying to pivot into a different type of position in the industry. Maybe you're pivoting up. In some cases, you may need to pivot down. Believe it or not, people do. They have a variety of reasons for doing that. And or you may be doing a full-on 360, and and so I think that first off, it's good to know that pivoting in any way, shape, or form is always going to be a little bit more. It's always going to have some more difficulty to it than just making a linear kind of move in regards to that. But it is still very possible, and have seen that time and time again, even in today's market. That being said, if you are looking to pivot, it's important to start changing. And I'm going to approach this I have to approach it from two methods, because you may want to pivot and you're already in a position. So you have to be kind of mindful of the messaging you're sending out with your LinkedIn profile. So if you're looking to if you're looking to go to a new level position, then you need to start showing, truthfully, you need to start showing that thought leadership. You need to start showing, okay, you've had, you present it at a presentation or a webinar or something along those lines, putting out articles and posts that show that type of strategic thinking, often when you're leveling up, but also going through and doing a complete audit of another person I spoke with today. I really loved his banner, but I didn't realize his banner was with his former company. And I thought his banner was new to him. And he's like, no, that's still with my company. And I was like, okay. We have a lot of misinformation, but then he was like, and in it, it's a transforming healthcare or something like that. It was healthcare related. And one of the things that I mentioned to him is like, when we need to get more of a tagline, so to speak, of what you do to transform. Not so much you're transforming healthcare, because that's pretty broad. But if you've been applying, which you just told me, you've been applying to these positions outside of the healthcare space, if I'm the hiring manager, I'm going to land on your profile and go, well, he's not in, like, why would I interview him? He's not in, like, he's clearly dedicated to healthcare. That's an example of you can still do that pivot, but you need to be very specific in that direction that or a little bit more vague when it comes to like a banner, for example. And then speaking to the type of position that you're looking for, speaking to that, making sure you have the right skills, for example. Skills are a really big thing right now on LinkedIn. And I'm seeing more and more people not utilizing them. There's a workaround where you literally can put, if you look at a job where it will literally say, okay, here is the top skills that this position is looking for. You can actually click on that on the job description in LinkedIn. It's going to show you what skills they're looking for versus the skills that you have on your profile and what you're missing. And so if you're not, I used to not be a person, we went from 50 to 100. I'm not have a skill for the sake of having a skill, but adding those additional skills to your profile is going to help you come up in searches. It's just a fact. And you want to come up in those searches. So if you're looking to make a pivot to different industries, things like that, what are the terms? What are the keywords that are being used? Obviously, we still want to be transparent, and we must have those types of skills or transferable skills, but make sure you're including those as well. So I think it's definitely something that is really important to being able to showcase what you offer and how that makes you unique.
Okay, great. Yeah, with the skills, though, the thing that bothers me about skills, I hear what you're saying about the value of them, but anybody could endorse anybody for skills, even if I never met them before. I don't know anything about them, right?
I don't so much worry about the endorsement piece. I'm going to always focus on recommendations over endorsements, but adding the skills to your profile itself will just help you bump up. So, like, for example, you can have your 5 top skills. These are what I call your overarching skills under your about section. So if you don't have that right now, think about, for me, it's job searching, career coaching, resume. I always get my own skills wrong. Resume writing, LinkedIn, and interview preparation. I don't think I mentioned that one. And so those are the 5 core areas that I focus on as a coach. And so those are my top 5 skills. So one of the things that I would say, and then having those skills now you can add to each position. Here's one thing I will say: people add like a laundry list. You really just need 5. 5 of the, for every position. What are the 5 top skills you use for that position? I don't need all 20. Don't look at my profile. I use my profile as a guide for my clients, to be very honest with you. So my profile sometimes becomes a guinea pig. So if you look at mine, she's like, well, she just told me not to do that. She has it. But I play around with my profile to show my clients things. So, but just really 5 skills under each position. But if you don't have that, go add those skills. And then at the bottom, adding the skills just by themselves. Don't worry about the endorsement piece, because as you said, I used to joke, like, if my mother ever had the chance, she would have endorsed me for everything, just because, she was my mom, and that's what she would have done. I mean, I could have literally posted a picture and been like, oh, the sky is, the sky's green. And my mom would have been like, yes, it is, girl. And, and it could have been blue, like that's, my mom just agreed, she always supported me 100%. So, so yes, my mom endorsing me would not have been a factor of weight. So don't focus on the endorsements, but do focus on adding additional skills. Just try to bump up your skills, refresh your skills too. If there's something you're not using or you haven't used, or if you do not want to do that skill, remove it from your LinkedIn profile. That is also something very important.
Okay. And so are you saying put the skills in the job in each work experience? Is that what you said? I just want to make sure people are clear on it.
Yeah, so you can actually so under your work experience now, you can actually add to that position, and you can add the skills you've used in that position.
All right, got it. All right, great. Thank you, Melanie. Charla, how would you use, and if you could give, like, let us know also what it would sound like, the about section, if you were looking to make a career pivot, how would you start that about section? And then what would
Okay.
you write about?
Before I forget, can I add on to what Melanie just said, and then I'll answer that. That's okay.
Sure, go ahead.
I want you to concentrate on emphasizing those business fundamentals. Corporate recruiters care about skills that drive business results. So instead of saying fiscal management and cost optimization, you could say that you developed and implemented risk management frameworks that ensured 100% regulatory compliance while reducing operational inefficiencies. You want to quantify your impact in that experience section, like Melanie was talking about, by, instead of I'm working with the HR director, and she was involved in talent acquisition, so she processed a lot of applications. But so get down to the so what. So what did that mean? What did you do to make those processes better? And she said, well, I reduced processing time by 30%, and while maintaining, quality standards. So when you can focus on those metrics in your experience section, like cost savings, efficiency improvements, customer satisfaction scores, process innovations, those are the things that recruiters want to know. They want to see, do you have the right skill set, and how did you make an impact in that company? So I get off my soapbox about that, but anything other than the skills that they are interested in or the achievements that you've made, you don't need it in your experience section. You want to make it, kind of short and sweet, because again, they're going to scan down that. But your about section is the hook. It's the thing that's going to draw the interest to make that person click. So you want to have, for lack of a better term, clickbait. At the beginning of your about section, before those three little dots, and Ken is a master at doing this. I can always tell when Ken has written somebody's LinkedIn profile, because he gives you a sentence at the beginning that makes you want to know more, So, try to use a unique value proposition there to show immediate impact. That's going to get somebody to want to click and know more about you. So I usually lead, with a value proposition statement, and then make sure that I have something in there that's going to really make that reader want to click through and read more. And then I advise you not to start from childhood and move forward. There's a literary concept called, in medias res, which means starting in the middle and telling that story. And you want to convey the value of what you do. And you want to also, show a little personality. It is not the same as your resume career summary. I totally agree with Melanie on that. it has to be your personal narrative. You're telling your career story of how you can add value to that prospective company. So you need to make it really clear. If you've got a couple of different aspects to what you do, then you might give it a framework of the three key skills, and then some accomplishments or outcomes of what you've done in each of those areas. So maybe you don't pigeonhole yourself, too tightly. So it's kind of a balancing act. That's where it helps to have an objective person like a resume writer or career coach look at that about statement, and from the lens of, does that grab me? Does that grab my attention? Do I want to read more?
Great, excellent, and I think that that last statement in particular, Charlotte. Think about what you would like to read. If you're writing something because you think this is how it's supposed to be written, in this ultra professional, staid approach. Yeah, you got to be professional. Yeah, you don't want to be too informal, but think about what you would want to read. What would cause you to click the see more button to keep reading? It's certainly not, I am a project manager with 20 years of experience, blah, blah, blah. I mean, that's not going to do it. What is it that's going to get them to want to click? I want to talk a little bit about recommendations. I see there's a little bit of a conversation going on in the chat. Alan, tell us what your thoughts on recommendations on LinkedIn, the value, and how do you go about getting them?
Yeah, that's a great topic. I think that's one thing that I notice a lot of times when I'm working with somebody, that they don't have recommendations. So recommendations are really an important component of LinkedIn profile. Why is it so important? Because it's giving you third-party validation. It's not just you saying what you bring to the table and what you've done. If you're getting one from a previous manager or two, then they're validating what you did on your job. And there's a few things. I think it's important to try to find somebody that you feel comfortable and confident that's going to give you a good recommendation. It's also a good idea to let them know that you're going to ask them, and when you do ask them on LinkedIn, to give them some ideas about what you would like them to say, which might be helpful with the types of roles and jobs that you're looking for. So it can be challenging. Not everybody will do it for you. Or, I've had numerous times myself where people have said they'll do it and they haven't done it. And, I follow up, and sometimes they'll do it and sometimes they won't. But I think, one, getting people that you feel like will do it and will give you a good recommendation is one of the key things. And two, making it easier for them. I think, Ken, you've said in the past that, you can even give them an idea of, you can even write it for them basically and say, here's some of the ideas I thought might be helpful. Please feel free to put it in your own words. So people seem to feel like it's going to be a very big time-consuming thing, and that's not the case, but they sort of can procrastinate or not get to it because of that. So the simpler that you make it for them, the better chance you have for doing that. And I think, again, we talk a lot about networking, and if you have a good relationship with the person, then I think they will have more of a tendency to do it, as opposed to just you have a very superficial type of relationship. I think it's less likely that you're going to be successful.
Yeah, thank you, Alan. Yeah, I agree with you. I do think recommendations, and I think Melanie mentioned it earlier, can be very valuable because you're right. It's somebody else telling you a story. And Melanie mentioned in the chat that her clients do it strategically. And to me, what that means is think about what your story is, and then go to different people in your career who you think can help tell that story. You might go to one person and ask them to talk about your leadership ability. You might go to another person, ask them to talk about your problem solving, somebody else about your initiative taking, whatever it is. You can get different people to tell your story. I also, I guess I just assume, like, I would never ask anybody for a recommendation if I wasn't sure they were going to give me a good recommendation. I don't know, maybe that's just me. And with that being the case, Alan, that's why I think the approach of, would you write me an email would you write me a recommendation? Assuming you will, I know how busy you are. So I wrote a recommendation down below. Feel free to edit it and put in your own voice, just like you said, Alan. And more often than not, the response is great, love it. Just do that. Use what you use. Send me the LinkedIn request. Because people do want to help you, Alan. I agree with you. They want to help, but then they hang up the phone. They got 100 emails. They got 5 meetings. They got to take the kids to soccer practice. They got to make dinner. They've got a million things. And it's like, boy, I'd love to write that recommendation, but I know it's going to take time. Again, Alan, you hit on all this, so I apologize. I'm repeating a lot of what you said. And I just can't, I got to find the right time to do it. And often that's not found. So I think targeting who you're asking, let them tell your story, and then help them write it, and you'll be more likely to get the recommendations you want and need to tell your story. We actually are at the top of the hour. I guess a couple of things. First of all, thanks to everybody for being on the call, and thank you for the birthday wishes, by the way. I haven't figured out how to respond to the chat, so I haven't done that. But I do thank you for that. I am now a Medicare man. It's a different, I don't get it. My father was 65 years old. I'm not sure how I became 65 years old, but as they say, it beats the alternative. So thank you for the wishes. And if we could go around now, and Melanie, why don't we start with you? If you want to give a final tip and tell people how they can get in touch with you.
Well, absolutely, of course. I'll start with the latter. Of course, you can find me on LinkedIn. It's where I spend a lot of my time. You'll also see earlier in the chat, too, I have officially launched all 4 of my, and then I'll give my tip at the end, but I've officially launched all 4 of my courses with Udacity. They opened them up briefly. For those that don't know, Udacity is an online learning platform, and I did 4 courses for them, and my LinkedIn courses right now are actually free for a very limited time. They do open those up, so if you're interested, I can just message me and I can send you the link for them. And so, yeah, that's been a little bit of a labor of love for 6 months that I've been working on behind the scenes. So excited that those are out. And thank you. And I don't know if Meryl hears the cat in the background, but that's how we know it's 7 o'clock because it's dinner time. And he's always on time for that. And my tip of the day is going to be, take a time to do an audit of the things that are or are not working in your job search, especially if you are needing to pivot or you have been laid off. It's a frustrating time. I mean, don't get me wrong. I fully, I see it, I feel it. I do truly feel it when I'm working with my clients and, hear stories. And I've heard a lot of stories this week, believe me. But I think it's always good, just like anything we do in life. Not everything we're going to do is going to work. So we really do need to stop sometimes when we are in a job search and go, okay, let me really figure out what is and isn't working. Is my resume, I'm sending my resume, and I've sent my resume 100 times, and I'm not getting any responses. So we know, as in medicine, we have to diagnose the problem before we can fix it. There's not an exact science in job searching per se, but we can always be making tweaks and changes and looking for improvement. So do an audit of your job search and of all your materials. And I think that can sometimes give us a fresh perspective and look at it as a fresh start too. Like, hey, you know what? Come Monday, because I'm always about starting a new week. I'm going to start with a fresh perspective and a fresh mindset, because that is going to really, truly help you navigate today's job market. So thanks. And thanks for everybody. We had a great audience today. And excited to be doing this on a bi-weekly basis with you guys.
Well, thank you. And again, congratulations on those courses. Especially if you can get them for free now, check them out.
Yeah.
And I'm sure even, paying for them is well worth it as well. So congratulations on that. Alan, how about you?
Yeah, the best way to reach me is on LinkedIn. You can mention that we met here if you have the paid version, or if you don't and you have one of your 5 requests still available. But I take note of who's been on the calls as well too. So I'd be willing to connect with you too. And I'd say, again, we talked about the challenge of the job market, but there are absolutely people landing. I've had a number of people of my clients landing in the last number of weeks. So I just want people to stay encouraged, realize, you need to put the effort in, you need to work hard at it, but everybody's going to land. We can't say exactly where or when, but just stay optimistic, stay positive, and keep working, and you will get to where you want to go.
Great. Thank you, Alan. That's great advice. Gotta keep the faith, keep positive. It's really all you can do. Again, you can mope and be depressed and bummed out about it, but that's not going to help you. So staying positive is important. Thank you. And Charlotte, how about you?
I want to encourage you also to stay positive, and I am following a man named Alex. I can't remember his last name. Starts with a P. It's kind of a Czechoslovakian kind of name, I think. But I'll put it. I have been reposting his post because although he's going through a job search himself, he's doing this, daily log about, and he's just got an incredible sense of humor. You would think that you were listening to a stand-up comedian. So if you're feeling kind of down, here's a guy who's going through the same stuff that you are, and he is posting, some things that I think will give you a laugh and lift you up. And I'll try to remember to share one of his posts again tomorrow so that you can see it. I put 2 resources in the chat for you. One is a great book for career pivots. It's called Switchers by Dr. Dawn Graham, and she also has a podcast on SiriusXM on Thursday mornings, I think around 10 o'clock, unless the time has changed. And then another resource that I use with my candidates to help them differentiate themselves is called Win the View. It's a technology that you can buy in a subscription to give you a different online career portfolio to do those slides like Ken was talking about, to leave behind or to use as an introduction to who you are and the accomplishments that you have. It also has a cool video messaging system in it, which is useful for 2 things. You can send after interview thank you notes as a voice message, which is really kind of cool. Will set you apart that you took the time to do that. And then you can also use it as a teleprompter to practice for your interviews. Record yourself, play it back, notice, where you need improvement. So again, that's Win the View. And I'm an affiliate, so I can save you like $30 off the cost of a 3-month subscription. I just pass it on to my clients because I think it's a very useful tool. Best way to reach me is usually through LinkedIn or on check out my new website. I finally got it up. Most of it, except for the blogs. And it's writtenbyapro.com. So that's been my project behind the scenes, is to try to update my website from its 2014 appearance to 2025. It was desperate need of an update.
All right. Way to go. Congratulations on that too, Charlotte. And thank you to all our coaches, and thanks again to the audience. You guys, we really appreciate your support and you being here. And please do post something on LinkedIn. Let everybody know that you got something out of the program. And then we'll be back again on Tuesday, June 24th at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And again, I'm Ken Schur. I'm a career coach. I'm an executive coach, and I've been doing keynote speaking lately too. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Reach out to me directly at kennethschurcoaching.com. Happy to speak with you and help you in any way that I can. So thanks again, everybody. Great program. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Until then, be well and take care.